Welcome to Bible class here at the park. We're in chapter 23 of the story. Last week, we took our first dive into the New Testament with the arrival of Jesus, the arrival of King Jesus. Certainly in a way, no one expected this king to arrive on the scene, but he has arrived. But today we get into kind of when we really think about Jesus. This is the passage that starts to get to really who he is and who we see him to be, which is kind of the life and the ministry of Jesus. And there's a word that I want to kind of buckle down on today that I think is a really important word in the scope of this chapter and throughout the rest of the New Testament and for our entire lives. I think what this chapter begins to really kind of crank down on, and we saw it a little bit in the previous chapter, how Jesus was fulfilling prophecy in all the ways that his birth and the first couple of years of his life played out. But what we see here is the New Testament writers, the gospel writers of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, presenting a case for and here's the word for today, the authority of Jesus. I want to hit on just a few different things. This may not be a long class. I want to hit on a few different things that I think present for us the question that is for us today. So I want to look at a few different things. One, Jesus in the desert, being tempted in the desert of the wilderness by Satan in Matthew chapter 4. The wedding in Canaan at Galilee in John chapter 2. Jesus casting out demons, and there's a few places we could go to look at that, but just the fact that he does that, really. There's a case in Mark chapter 1, and then in Mark chapter 2, it's the case for Jesus acting in a certain way on the Sabbath that was frowned upon by the local Jewish authorities. And then we just kind of look at people's reaction to his teaching as a whole. So in Matthew chapter 4, and all of these things are kind of within this chapter 23 that you'll look at, but I just want to make sure you know exactly where we're going here in the scriptures. If you've got just your regular Bible with you. If you're not familiar with the story, this is not a retelling of the story. It's actually actual scripture that is put into an order that tells the story as more of a narrative form. And so it's not a retelling that we have to decide, did he retell that well? It's actual words from scripture. So that's why this is a really valuable resource. So some of the passages that get mentioned here in chapter 23, we start in Matthew chapter 4. This is immediately after Jesus has been baptized. Man, we could spend a lot of time on just the baptism of Jesus and the meaning, the depth, the richness of that story. Could go on for days. But immediately Jesus is led into the wilderness to be tempted by Satan. And so Satan presents him with these three different things, basically with food after fasting, with power over land, and basically saying, hey, throw yourself down and the angels will catch you. They will tend to you. They won't let anything happen, right? Jesus responds to each of those with a word from scripture. Man shall not live by bread alone. Do not put the Lord your God to the test. And then finally Jesus says to him, away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Then the devil left him, and angels came and attended to him. Jesus allowed Satan to have this conversation. He allowed him to be in his presence. But finally, eventually told him, away from me, Satan. And Satan left him. So Jesus exerts here his authority over the source of evil and sin itself. Jesus asserts authority over Satan. We see in John chapter 2, the story of Canaan in Galilee, where, I wish we had time to go into all the depths of all these different things. But what we have here is a wedding that they have run out of wine. Okay, our context, kind of a party foul to do that, but certainly not something that should make scripture or warrant some sort of miraculous healing. It's like, man, what a bummer. Much bigger deal in this original context. And Jesus is saying more than just, oh, I'm sorry you ran out of wine, I'll help you out here. Jesus' message in this whole thing is much broader, much deeper, much more cosmic than just, I'll help you out with a little bit of wine. But the miracle that happens here, the part I want to focus on right here is the miracle that happens is Jesus has his followers fill up 6 water jars. They dip out of that water, serve it to the master of ceremonies, the banquet master. He takes a sip. Hang on. This is not just wine. This is the best wine we have here. So Jesus exerts his authority even over nature here. There's an incredible amount of power, kind of cumulative power that's necessary for water to become wine. And Jesus just makes it happen. So in this, and we can look at how many other miracles, that Jesus exerts his authority over nature itself. So his authority over Satan, his authority over nature itself. Let's go back to Mark chapter 1, and we'll spend a tiny bit more time here in Mark chapter 1 and 2. Mark chapter 1, we see Jesus driving out demons. And so without even going into all the specific details of each one of those, Jesus driving out demons is Jesus exerting his authority over these demonic presences. So of course we could say, he has authority over Satan. So of course he has authority over demons. But I want to make this clear that he is exerting authority over these demonic presences, the presence of demonic spirits. That Jesus has authority over those things. And then in Mark chapter 2, I want to read just this little passage from the very end of Mark chapter 2, verse 23 and following. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and his disciples walked along. They began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" So the Pharisees had this strict rule that no work of any kind, and they defined that very strictly, no work of any kind could be done on the Sabbath. So he answered, "Have you ever read what David did when he and his company were hungry and in need? In the days of Abiathar, and the high priest, he entered the house of God and ate the consecrated bread, which is lawful only for priests to eat. And he also gave some to his companions. Then he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." So this tradition, this thing passed down through the generations that God gave his people, Jesus even comes and says, "You've got this backwards. You've got the whole thing backwards. But I am Lord," meaning I even have authority over the Sabbath itself. In Mark chapter 1, just backing up a little bit, in the midst of all these instances, miracles, things that Jesus was doing, he was also teaching. 2 quick passages. Mark 1, verse 22 says, the people were amazed at his teachings because he taught them as one who had authority, not as the teachers of the law. And down in 27, the people were all so amazed that they ask each other, what is this new teaching? And with authority, he even gives orders to impure spirits, and they obey him. So Jesus has authority over everything. We could fast forward a little bit to the end of Matthew 28, in which he says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. And therefore go make disciples, baptize them, teach them. Jesus has authority. The book of Hebrews even makes a really great case. The first 3 or 4 chapters of the book of Hebrews lines out very specifically how Jesus is greater than angels, how Jesus is greater than Moses, how Jesus is greater than Joshua, how Jesus is even greater than the Sabbath. Jesus is greater is really kind of one of the themes that you can pull out of the book of Hebrews. So Jesus has authority. Jesus is God himself. He is one with God. And so, of course, he has authority, but Jesus has come and asserting this authority over our lower story. So he's bringing his upper story authority into our lives in a very real way. So Jesus has authority. So the question is, for you, for me, for us today, does Jesus have authority over your life? Is sin a problem today? Well, we don't need to discuss this. Yes, sin is an issue today. So what is the root of all of this sin? Well, I believe it comes down to the fact that Jesus is not being given authority over the entirety of our lives. We have a tendency, and it feels very natural to us, this tendency to put ourselves on the throne of our own lives. And it's fine that God exists up until the point that his authority would encroach on my authority over my life. Certainly, I have authority to make all the choices over my life that I want, and I should be able to decide how my life goes. Well, when all of humanity, or when giant swaths of humanity feel like they are the authority over their own lives, that's going to spill over into others' lives in very unhealthy ways. And so we get these social issues that just rip us apart. And we have all sorts of issues that end up tearing us apart in all kinds of ways. That at the root of them is us trying to keep authority, trying to keep ourselves on the throne of our own lives. And the gospel message is that by taking authority over our own lives, we've taken God off the throne, created a gap between us and him, and doing things our own way. And having divided ourselves from God, we have entered into a life of sin. And so the gospel message is there's a way not only to be forgiven of that sin, but for your life, for eternity, to be set back in its proper order by putting God back on the throne in the way that he created us to be. You remaining the created being and him remaining the sovereign creator is how we were created. It's how life was meant to play out. And so sin entered the picture when we said, no, we're going to do things our own way. That's the story of the garden. That's the story of Israel's fall. And that's the story of our lives. And so, do we now give authority when Jesus comes on the scene and makes the case a very compelling, convincing case that he has authority over all heaven and all of earth, and the authority to forgive the sin in your life. Now, are we going to give that authority, take ourselves off the throne and give that authority over to Jesus? Now I put myself under the authority of King Jesus. Aaron Loney, speaking this past Wednesday night in our summer series, had this great statement that I'll just need to paraphrase here, that every way that I identify myself comes after I have kneeled and bent my knee to King Jesus. That I am not American, I am not father, I am not husband, I am not anything else before I am Christian, before my identity is rooted in me having given all of my authority over to King Jesus. He is my king. And after that, I am identified as Christian father, Christian dad, Christian American. That Christ is the center of my identity because he is king. He has authority, and I've given him all the authority of my life. So I put my life completely under his authority. That's how things were created to work. That's how things were meant to work. I've got some ways, I've got some things in my life that maybe I haven't given full authority over to yet. Yeah, I've given Jesus full authority over my Sunday mornings. I am committed to being at church every Sunday morning. It's not a question. Now, what about the rest of my life? What about Monday through Saturday? What parts of your life have not been given over to Christ's kingship? The case is made. Jesus has all authority, but he gives us the option to remain king of our own life and fall away and be our own God for all of eternity and not be in the presence of God for all of eternity. Or we can give our lives over to him and have our life put in its proper order, which is not a guarantee that life will be perfect, and not a guarantee that life will be free of suffering, because we still live in a broken world. But it guarantees that your life will be in order, and that the peace of God can reign over every circumstance that you're in. And the power of God has the ability to work in your life. So that's the question for today. The case has been made. Jesus has authority. Now, does he have authority over your life? That's our question for today. I hope you can sit with this for a little bit today and decide what parts of your life have yet to be given over to the kingship of Christ. I hope you guys have a great Sunday, or whenever you're watching this. Love you guys. Let us know if there's any way that we can be a blessing to you. We'll see you next time. God bless.